Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final webinar of the year of 2024. I know, so sad, but there will be more next year. But this one's going to be an awesome one. Could be the best one we've had so far this year. It's all about trends and predictions for 2025. We've got loads of people signed up for this webinar, and I can see you all filtering in now, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I am going to flick through to our next slide, which is all about our wonderful panelists. I'm going to quickly give you their names and who they are, but I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So we've got Devon Pasha, who's Director of North America Event Design Collective and lots of other things, won multiple awards, as has Enrico Gallorini, one of the most beautiful sounding names in Italian I've ever heard. He is the co-founder and CEO of GRS Research and Strategy and lots of other things as well. He'll tell you a bit about it in a minute. He's also written a book, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his book and give us some information on that shortly with a beautiful presentation he's done. And finally, the CEO and founder of Grip, our very own Tim Groot, is here to give you all his insights. Because let's be honest, he is talking to all of the event organizers all the time, all the C-level execs. He knows what's going on. He's got his finger on the pulse. So first of all, we're going to go to Devon. Devon, please tell us a bit about you and why you're excited about events next year.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm actually US based, so it's still morning here. I'm delighted to be with you all. So I'm Devon Montgomery Pasha, certified event designer and also owner and chief MC of DMP Creative. So my job is to use my event strategy background to help people see what change behavior they want in 2025 and to be utilized as a catalyst and tool storyteller to ensure that they make those connections and get where they want to go. I'm delighted to see us moving to a more human-centric style of events in 2025, which I know my co-panelists will talk about, but I'm super excited to see us go somewhere different and move away from pandemic thinking to positive thinking.
Well, thank you very much. And we're very excited to have you, Devon. Thank you for joining. Enrico, tell us a bit about you and in a sentence or two, why you're excited about events next year.
Yes, sorry, my microphone was off. I'm Enrico Gallorini. I am the co-founder of a research company. So I have the opportunity and the privilege of being in an observatory that collect a lot of information and data. And all this information and data make me very excited because I think it's a great moment for the event industry. And not only for next year, but I think for the next future, that there's a lot that is going to arrive. So probably later I can share with you some of the framework that I've used to try to understand the trajectory for the future.
Thank you, Enrico, and thanks for joining. And finally, Tim, tell us a bit about you and what Grip does as well, and why you're excited about events for next year.
Yeah, so I'm Tim. I'm the founder and CEO of Grip, and thank you for having me, Hugh. So at Grip, we support over 700 events a year to make sure that business relationships happen at those events. So we provide event tabs, AI matchmaking, and registration to make sure the right people connect with each other. And I'm really excited about next year because in speaking to organizers, there is a clear trend to wanting to provide a greater ROI and provide a better environment for people to connect with each other. So constantly thinking about events as a way to bring people together and move markets forward. And those are key terms that we're hearing again and again. And so, yeah, really excited about supporting everyone on that and seeing how we can drive that in 2025.
Thank you very much, Tim. And thank you, all of you, for coming with your A-grade backgrounds and podcast webinar studios. Devon, you've got a full-on mic there. I'm very envious of that. Enrico, you've got the Dolomites in your background, so well done. It's not a virtual background, that's real. And Tim, some artwork. Who did that? Who did the artwork there? Very nice.
Yeah, no, that was, you can see the artist in the middle and then my dad and me on either side. So don't look at it too much because clearly not as good as the Italian art. Yeah.
Love it. Bit of oil paintings, or is it watercolor? Not sure, but it looks good. Very colorful. Excellent. We're all looking set for our amazing webinar. Right. who are we going to go to first? Well, we've got a presentation. I always like starting webinars. If someone can put some effort into a few slides and set the scene for us, only for 5 minutes, I think it will really, really be beneficial for this particular webinar. And I want to hand over to Enrico, who, to talk about the future of events, is going to go back to the past and then give us a bit of a potted history. This is really exciting. When I first had a chat with Enrico a couple of months ago to get him on this webinar, he told me about this. I was like, you have to give our webinar participants this, because this is gold dust and it's from your book, isn't it? So I'm going to hand over to you, Enrico. If you want to share your slides, I will stop my slide sharing and you can share your ones. And then we can all listen in about what the future events will be in 2025 and beyond. Right, I'll leave it to you. Go for it.
Thank you very much. And obviously, the opportunity that I have being inside of the research field and having all this information also allowed me to somehow travel a lot, or sometimes they invite me in some conference, or some client ask me, but what will be the event of the future? What will be the event of the future? And also in this webinar, what will be the future and the future? And we know that it is impossible to have the future, but many people say that the best way to understand or try to connect with the future is to have a clear picture of the present. And we know that the present is just a reflection of what is coming from the past. So what happened to me is that I was thinking how to make these ideas about the future, and I came out, as you may already mentioned, to write a book. And I'm not here to talk about the book, but because sometimes happen that the people also ask me, where can I buy it? Incredibly, Amazon. Amazon also sell books. They start from there. In any case, what is interesting for me to share with you is that the basis of the event is something that is very strong and important. And I went through this concept of when the event started, and I went back, and back. And we have to understand that there is a particular moment, actually 70,000 years ago, where human need to connect each other. It's called this period the cognitive revolution. So the humans have started to use the vocabulary in a different way, and to use this vocabulary allowed them to create stories or share their experience of how to hunt, how to cook better the food, how to heal, and all the other things. So at the beginning, our species start to gather together to create this event because they need to share in order to survive, because we have nothing inside of our body that can allow us to attack or to defend ourselves. And many studies say that the secret superpower of human is the storytelling. And it's true, because still today we can play football or soccer with anybody in the world, but we do it only because we share the same story about football, but football do not exist. And we are the only animal that use stories to understand each other. Events are where these stories took places from the beginning. And this is very important, because in my journey, what I discovered is that there are a couple of things that are super fundamental, were the basis of the events that are still fundamental today. So one is, in my discovery, the importance of rituals and ritualities. So as human, we like these rituals. So the moment when we gather together, how we gather together and everything, and the rituality. And we know perfectly, for example, in the exhibition industry, that after COVID, many organizers try to change the date of the exhibition, but it was impossible, because it's not the organizer that decide the date, it's the industry, the niche that event represent and gather together that make this date the rituality. And this is very fundamental. We know that we will meet for technology at the beginning of January in Las Vegas, but probably we forget that the name of the event is CES, for example. The other element that is very important when we gather together is the spirituality. And I know that when I talk about spirituality and exhibition event industry, people say, wow, what are you talking about? But it's very, very fundamental to remember that we gather together because we would want to belong in something that is bigger than ourselves alone. And we have all experienced when we are in a concert, when we sing all together the same song, and we feel that there is much more than just ourselves. Those moments are incredible, and these moments are very similar also in the moment when we participate to a business event or a conference or an exhibition, because we feel that we belong to that experience, to that industry. I always say that, for example, the badge that we put on our neck is not just because we have a name and surname that is super useful to connect. No, it's because we can see who belong to that space. And when we are around the city, we see someone with the same badge and we already smile because we feel that we are in something bigger. And all the other elements, step by step, enter inside of the importance of the event, like the power, the wealth that came from the Egyptian, then the spectacle and the entertainment with the Greek and the Roman, the trade, so the commerce part just enter inside of the event during the Middle Age for the Silk Road, and then the intellectual sharing that we had during the Renaissance, and finally we arrived at the need of globalization and so on. But these are the basis, and the present that is very important is that the event is really booming at this moment. The question is why it is booming, and for me there are many reasons that could be the part that we can discuss about the future. So one is, as I told you, is part of the human evolution, this event need of connection. The other one is that there is a clear correlation between the social network growth and the less connected that we are. So we need to gather together, because we use strange word like social network for something that is everything but not social and is not a real network. We just use the wrong word. It's a disconnected way to communicate. The other element that is very important is that the COVID give us this wake-up call that we are a social animal. But the idea is, okay, but what is going to happen also in the future? And there are three trends that for me are very important. One is that we are already living in this strange situation where the hyper-isolation, the depression of working alone, like we are doing now in this moment. I'm alone speaking with, yes, with you guys, but technically I'm talking in front of a camera, are creating this super hyper isolation. And this hyper isolation can be beaten going, I don't know, sometimes to the Starbucks to share ideas with someone, because we don't work anymore in the office. But we need, again, those spirituality. So to belong to something, we need to go to these in-person events where we meet similar people to us. The other element that I think is connected to this is that we are not working anymore to the office. So events can be the office of the future, because companies can really use those conference events, B2B moment and everything, also because they have budget to meet there. So it's easier to connect with your team, to bond, but also to your client. The last one is that there is really a need of feel the humanity that there is behind those connection. And just to finish, the last few words is about luxury. When we talk about the future, always they say that it's important to understand what is the luxury today, to understand which are the most important layer to build tomorrow. And one of the things that we know about luxury is that in the past, having a piece of unique art was fundamental, or maybe a luxury car. I am a super lucky person, and my grandfather was the first person in our town to have the car. Today, a car is everything but not a luxury, right? What is the luxury in the last few years? It was to be traveling, to discover new part of the world. It was to have a telephone. It was to other things. Today is to go to this retreatment where you are totally disconnect with the digital. What is also coming in terms of super luxury today, it's the one-to-one in-person experience. So I think that this element of gathering together as human, it's becoming so fundamental that it will be a luxury. So event industry will be also the luxury of the future. If for you it's okay, because my 5 minutes is finished, I'll stop here and I leave this as part of our thoughts for the next conversation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Enrico. That's great. I mean, what I think is really fascinating about that is kind of how COVID's maybe changed a lot of this, and events being the office of the future, I think is quite fascinating. We're seeing that from large events like Money 2020, where that's the place to go and have your meetings, because a lot of people are working remotely now. Are you finding that, Enrico? Is that a thing where you have these large, massive events, and that's where people congregate to do their meetings now?
I just can give you my personal experience. A few weeks ago, I was invited in the classical event, very nice and everything. Usually in the past, I was going alone, but I am a CEO of a company. We are 60 people. in different countries, and we never gathered together. And I know the importance of having those bonding experience. This year we went in 7 people. It's cheaper than organizing a meeting with these top 7 people in any other place, because at least we have the budget for that event, and we are already there, and we meet also with the client. So this is my idea about the office for the future, because there is a reason to go on those events, that is not just to sell, but is to create also this spirituality and all the other things that I was talking about.
And Tim, what about you? Because you're seeing this, aren't you, with the ecosystem events, the large events? This is where people are congregating, and that's only getting bigger as we move into 2025.
Yeah, exactly what Enrico is saying. I'm seeing kind of in the last, I'd say 2 years, has started to pick up a lot of momentum. I think that meeting room space and kind of dedicated like space for companies to meet with their own teams is more and more important. So I've seen at some events, for example, where companies are doing their sales kickoffs the day before a trade show that they're attending as a sales team, right? Because rather than maybe previously doing that at the office or separate offsite, they're just extending their stay and bringing a couple of extra salespeople, and then you got your whole sales team, and now you can do your sales kickoff thing at that thing. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think organizers should appeal more in 2025 to departments or entire companies and create dedicated space and opportunities and facilities for letting companies internally connect with their own teams, because they're probably not seeing them outside of the events that they're attending as an organization.
Yeah, it's a great meeting place to bring everyone together. And plus, you've probably got your prospects there as well. So it's not just internal meetings, it's meetings that could generate more revenue for you as a sponsor exhibitor. Devon, tell me a bit about 2025. What are you looking forward to? Because in our pre-call, I love how you're talking about, human-centric events, and your idea about Disney, and how they position themselves, and how events should probably position themselves in the future into next year. I'd love to hear
I think
about that.
it's a great segue, because what we're really talking about, and Enrico set us up, we're talking about humans, we're talking about humanity. And in our most digital world, and everyone's going to start talking about AI, it's still thinking about how we're connecting with each other. I know we had a sort of a pre-call. I had just watched one of Disney's new holiday ads, and it's a story. And it's a story about a little boy and a little octopus, and with no words at all, they managed to tell this whole magical story. And what you realize is Disney doesn't sell vacations, or Disney doesn't sell products. Like, Disney sells magic. And that's really what the connectivity is. It's like, I felt through that story that there was magic. I felt the joy. I felt the awe. I want to continue to experience that, because that ignited something in me. And that's what I want to continue. And that's what I think we're going to start thinking about moving into 2025, is not that your company sells a product. It sells an emotion. It sells the story. It sells the continuation of what that will do for you, what it will make you, what it will help you learn, how it will help you connect, will it make you faster or stronger or smarter? And that's what we're going to be looking into. And how do you create those powerful narratives? To Enrico's point, I strongly believe that the shortest distance between two people is a story. And so how are we using that powerful anthropological tool to continue to connect human to human? And how do we utilize that as a value statement to connect to people, to get them to have that desired behavior, which is attendance, registration, purchases, et cetera? We have to use that as the foundation to move forward and be successful.
And what events have you seen who do that very well in terms of elevating it to more than just a B2B transactional event? It's more of a kind of leading with passion, leading with the kind of outcomes of what you can deliver for your participants.
I think we're looking at not just events themselves, but events who are using certain tactics. So going back to this idea of belonging, Storycraft Labs, Google XI initiatives, really distill down through a lot of research what that means. And we're able to give statistics, like studies show that belonging increases performance by 56%. So even having that in your internal sales meeting, by bringing those sales teams all together, you all belong to this one group and we all belong to this industry, all of a sudden you're 50% more likely to stay at your own company. How much is that going to reduce attrition in 2025, which reduces your cost to onboard new people? The idea that if you feel belonging at an event, you're 160% more likely to recommend it to someone else. So it's how do you add this sense of empathy, of values, of truth, the power of play. So I think you're looking at that at PCMA. Convening leaders are really big on understanding how to add those truths and values. I saw that reflected in an encore event. I think it was called Elevate. They did with Merits. They had a 93% satisfaction rate. And the whole event was about empathy and immersion with a brand name. But it was, I'm 93% more likely. I felt that my value was seen. I felt that I belonged. So this idea of understanding values and value graphics is what's going to drive that desired behavior. And I think that when you see companies who aren't employing those tactics, you're going to start to see which ones are not going to be replicable in 2026 and beyond.
That's great. I love the focus on value when it comes to selling your event, marketing your event. Tim, who have you seen who's good at kind of promoting an event via the outcomes that they deliver, via the value that they deliver to their participants?
So I think actually there's a couple of kind of events that I think of, and exactly as both Devon and Enrico are saying, like if I think of something like M&I forums and worldwide events, how they're not just looking to facilitate an interaction between two people, but they're thinking actively about the environment that you're in and the state that you're in when that connection happens, right? So, you know, they do these kind of hosted buyer events, and one-to-one meetings is a big part of the organization of the event, but they know that just having a 10-minute conversation about the hotel that you might be offering is not enough, right? So what they do is they organize activities, and they organize like roundtables and other interaction formats for how you can bring people together. And it is all of these different types of interactions, these different states that you're in, result in different conversations. And I think that, you know, there's a kind of meeting design research piece that I read earlier this year. It's like how much less interest there is in kind of keynotes and content, like just like one-to-many content, right? And I think that that's a very important trend that we will see continue in 2025, where there'll be a greater focus on how can I interact with others, and because that allows people to be in a higher state of emotional awareness, and that is what's needed, I think, to kind of create better interaction between people, and that will result in greater outcomes. So I think those are some of the key things that we're seeing, and some of the organizers that are doing it well.
Yeah, because you talked, I think, in our pre-call around contact is king, and we used to talk about content is king, and actually it's all about the contact which results in those business relationships being made. Enrico, sorry, go on.
Well, actually, sorry, that's not just the contact as in getting the contact details, which I think it can be misunderstood for. That's the contact in terms of having a connection with someone, having a feeling in contact with someone. So like I was thinking, is it contact or is it like interaction, right? It's like it's the interaction between multiple people, and it's like interaction is king or contact is king. Like I think there is something there, but it's not about just getting the contact details. It's more than that. It's really connecting with someone.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to the next piece around why we need the connection. Something you mentioned, Tim, was this pressure we're seeing for from exhibitors and sponsors that's being applied to the organizers. That just seems to be ramping up in 2025, and it's, you know, marketing budgets are getting cut, and they want to see more return on investment. Is that something you're seeing, Tim, from the organizers that you're talking to?
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. I think on top of that, right, like, you know, you see that there's a greater focus on quality of interactions that sponsors and exhibitors are looking for, and you see that organizers are also seeing this. For example, I was looking at the kind of annual results of an organizer last week, and they were reporting that they had done 20% fewer events. Big kind of media company. They did about like 250 events compared to about 300 the year before. But they had grown their participation at those 250 events with something like 30%. And so you see fewer events, but making sure you're actually bringing real quality to the events that you have, and making sure you're going to be even better at providing an ROI for those events. I think those are some of the key trends that we'll see in the coming year, right? Like, how can I truly make sure that the right people are in the room? It's not just about churning out a lot of events or having a lot of people attend, it's about having the right people in the room. And how can I facilitate the interaction with sponsors and exhibitors for those people?
If I may add to this, because this is something that in the event industry, we have always talked about this concept of serendipity and the things that happen in an event. It's unique and it's magic. Actually, it's very true. And because it's something that it was in my mind, I tried to deep dive, what is this serendipity and how does it work? Technically, it's just a matter of probability and statistics. Just very easy. So if you put a lot of people with the same intent in the same space that come in the same industry, in Latin we call it coincidence, coincidence, that is co more than one, incident means crash, I don't know in English. So and it happened. The point is that if we want to move from this serendipity idea to something that for me, it's where we need to go, is to make this serendipity more useful. We need to use tools, we need to use technology, we need to use what is already in place and make this connection that is not just sharing data, but this connection allow the people to meet face to face, and then they can do whatever they want, like Zoom and everything. But those elements, I think, are so important, and the tool, obviously, I'm referring to Grip, not because we're here, but those tools are becoming not only fundamental, but foundational for the future of the event. The point is how we, as organizer or user of beneficiaries, visitors, speakers, whatever it is, use this tool in the best way possible. That's the big challenge for the storytelling, that we need to make the people to use this tool at the maximum possibility. So this is my point. No more serendipity. Serendipity will happen, is a statistical element. So we put all the people together, but now we have the technology to make this serendipity little more, I wouldn't say precise, but organized.
Well, that brings us on to another trend for 2025, and that's one-to-one meetings or facilitated meetings or pre-scheduled meetings or hosted by as a type of event that uses those things, actually bringing people together. So Collingwood Advisory and CISO did a report, came out last week, about event organizers and where they are right now and what they're looking at for 2025. And the biggest stat in there was that 50% of organizers are interested in this kind of model of actually remove the serendipity, bring people together intentionally. And I just wanted to talk about that. Why, Devon, do we think this is having a moment, these kind of facilitated meetings? Why now? Why is it so important for 2025?
I think you can actually, look at Enrico's story about experiences and, in this digital hyper isolated way, to show up to a 5,000 person conference and be one of a 5,000 with no connectivity, no interpersonal, no sense of belonging. You may as well just be as isolated as you are sitting in a Starbucks, right? It's just, you're still a C, you're not seen, you're not an individual. So when you think about these hyper personalized, small, bespoke experiences, that's the luxury. That's that next luxury piece that we're referring to. I have a colleague from Hard Rock who was launching one of their new properties in Dublin and had this amazing opportunity to bring a bespoke group together to have this immersive experience. And one of the things they got to do with their partner at Song Division was to create a custom song that they all got to participate in together. And they co-collaborated on this artistic piece. And it became almost a soundtrack, but this ability to say, I got touched on all my senses. I got to see something and be immersed. I shared this creative, serendipitous coincidence with this group, and I will always have that moment. And now I'm going to remember who got that moment for me, who created that moment. I'm always going to be connected to those 12 people who shared it with me. And I think that's what we're going to be looking at, because that is the power that drives behavior. I feel seen. You spoke to my values. You created an emotion which anchored a memory. This is what the new economy is going to be. It's going to be that attention economy. It's going to be that emotional economy. And how can you utilize that to drive those desired behaviors? And I think those people who have a handle on how to do more with those pieces versus more for more, Tim, to your point, you can reduce the amount of meetings that you do and spend that budget, which we know is not always increasing at the rate that the prices are, and say, how do I dial in? How do I design strategically for that coincidence to have a higher impact versus just doing more and hoping the spaghetti hits the wall? So how do you use these tools? And I think that's where we're going to see the trend going, is those experiences that anchor such powerful memories that can't help but drive better behavior.
Yeah, and I think those experiences are the things you'll remember for the rest of your life. And yeah, the most powerful events are the ones that you remember. Tim, one-to-one meetings then, we got a question from the audience saying, how do they improve the attendee experience? How do you actually use them on the ground day to day? How are we seeing clients use one-to-one meetings as an effective way to improve the attendee experience?
So, I mean, there's many ways that they can impact it, right? Like, so for example, Devon earlier referenced kind of PCMA convening leaders. And there we do a pre-day where we actually have, I think last year was about 50, well, actually technically this year in January, it was 50 exhibitors that had a kind of full schedule of meetings with buyers on the day before the event opened. So you can use it as a kind of pre-qualifier to bring a dedicated group of people together, which is very powerful. We've also seen it at UFI, where it was more of a speed networking setup, which can be interesting, right? If it has the right kind of targeting available for people to facilitate some specific meetings. We've seen it at Money 2020 for the first time this year, that had a dedicated meeting program called Must Meet on the Sunday. So normally the Money 2020 event starts on the Monday, and on the Sunday is like a very content heavy day. So they've done something interesting where they started a day earlier. So there's like a whole bunch of event organizers that are thinking about how can they make sure that people have a certain amount of great connections. Because I think if any company exhibits at an event, right, you know that as an exhibitor, you probably need 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 deals to come out of that event for it to be worth it. Although organizers like talking about the big numbers, the reality is that most exhibitors will be very happy if they get like 1 or 2 deals out of it, right, that they can directly attribute to that event. So if you can increase those chances significantly by providing some meetings, that's a really great like first step, right, and makes a big difference to the overall event experience.
Yeah, and that's something we saw at Mash Media, didn't we? From the last webinar, we had Jack Newey on from Mash Media saying they did 10 deals, or 10 deals were actually done at his show. Irrelevant of the ones that were done afterwards, and there were even more, but 10 were done there and then. So yeah, I think proving that ROI comes back to our previous point about sponsor exhibitor value and making sure they don't churn. Next one I want to talk about is something's pretty close to your heart, Enrico, being Italian, is passion. The passion we might see in events in 2025. So I remember you talked in our pre-meeting about how there are some events that really dial up the passion, even ones as boring as those that focus on tractors, but they still tweak the messaging and deliver the event in such a way that it gives you that incredible experience that anchors passion in your kind of belief in what this event's for. So could you speak a bit on that and why it's important in 2025, please?
Yes, I feel that the example is always useful. So this event I was talking about is called AIMA International. It's a huge event, 300,000 people that come from all over the world in Bologna to a precise tractor, industrial tractor that is not like the one that is in Germany, so super large tractor. This is a niche tractor and everything. And for me, this word that is very important, that will be even more important for the future, that is authenticity, it's very, very fundamental. So I always say that we already enter in this situation where the truth will be very difficult to discover, because soon AI will create a fantastic Enrico Gallorini or algorithm that is trained with all my webinar and everything. You will never see or understand if this is myself is true or it's an AI avatar that is talking about me. Event cannot be faked, and the authenticity is the only way to discover the truth of an experience. In that case, I tell just because you also said, tell me something very practical. This amazing organizer, that is the association of the tractor industry in Italy, say we want to do something different related to our brand value. And they were very humble that say, but we don't know what are our brand value. So as a research company, we try to understand which were the value that were identified to that brand. And one of the most important things was really this concept about passion. And they love it because they thought they were the most international event, the most precise tractor niche event. They were much more on the industrial side, but the beneficiaries, so the visitors and exhibitors say, no, we like this passion. So they create this idea of I love EIMA, and they put this heart everywhere. And they also create this moment where if you kiss someone under the I love EIMA signals, you will be rewarded with, I don't remember exactly what, but you can see it on Facebook and everything, how many people did it in a super, I wouldn't say boring, but in any case, it's an industrial exhibition that is there since ages. They really shifted and they use the real brand value that for their beneficiary was important, and they make something, I wouldn't say funny, because it was not funny. It was a new way to interact with the people, and the users, the beneficiaries, love it, and they share it, and they connect, and they are doing a lot of things. And again, for us as a research company, was a great story to say, because they start with a very humble point of view and say, we have no idea which are our value. Because it's not that you can put the art everywhere. You can put the heart if the value are the passion. But maybe if you are recognized as the most serious, the most, I don't know, whatever, you will not put the heart. So these things for me are important. And this element of authenticity, that you cannot fake your brand, you cannot fake the experience, you cannot fake your values, is very connected in what Devon would say. So the values is the way to connect the people. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm seeing as we're moving into next year is authenticity. Generative AI is very human-like. And what it means is things like ChatGPT will be sending you various messages from other AI agents that you might not know are human or not. But then moving into next year, we might get so much of that events are the only option, and we have to go and meet in person to know that we're speaking with another human, which I think will increase the value of them. I mean, talking to passion and authenticity, what are you seeing in the market, Devon? What's really exciting you when it comes to those concepts at events?
I think it's giving us permission to belong instead of fit in. And I want to clarify, before everyone wanted to fit into the group. And it was, so I will tailor myself down so that I am a part of this whole, because it was about human connectivity, but value being in conformity. Now I think we're shifting to being passionate about authenticity. So you can be as weird as you want. Be as authentic as you want. And belonging is about meeting people where they are as those individuals and still feeling like I'm a valued person. And I think that's where the energy shift is going. Basically, understanding individual values provides that empirical understanding of what drives the behavior. And I think that's where we're going to see that authenticity. That's what the passion is going to stay around, because it's what's going to cut through the digital noise. It's what's going to cut through the isolation, and it's what's going to drive the behavior to spend the money, to spend the attention economy, and to show up. And so if we can start shifting this idea of I'm passionate about what makes you you and how that adds value to us. You think about being passionate about tractors. We all love this tractor. And I'm so passionate because it helps my economy. It's my grandfather's business. It's changing the face of, food production in this area. I'm passionate about the outcome of that. I want to share that with you. I'm a geek about tractors. You see that in things like car shows, new tech shows, fashion shows. This is something that drives me as an individual, and I want to show up. And if you can connect to that in a way that makes me feel as myself that I'm a part of that community, that's what's going to drive what we need. And we're all trying to do more with less. We all want the same amount of people to do the same thing. So how do you cut through and get them to do what you need them to do, to be a part of your organization, to buy your product, to go to your hotel, to use, your organization? you have to cut through that in a way that touches them as their individual self and say that you, as your unique person, is what belongs to this group and makes us valuable. And I think in that connection, that's where you're going to see us being able to cut through that isolation, to cut through that maybe fear or disconnect between an AI avatar and a human self. And when we do meet in 2025 and beyond, it's because we've been able to touch on those points.
And
Yeah,
if I can add on this, because thank you very much, Devon. This is exactly fundamental. Yeah, really, absolutely. It's also very important in 2025 that the organizer understand that there is a great opportunity to change. There is a great opportunity to try to experiment something new, but it means also that there is a need of focusing, dedicating time to think, to sit, to go deeper on what you already have, to understand those customer behavior and everything. That is something that somehow our industry that is so fast and so, let's say, operational, and we have to deliver and we have to run and everything. Probably 2025, 2026, it's also the time that we need also to think deeper and more about what we already have, because we have the luxury, we have a lot of things that is already there, but you cannot go randomly. It's important to have the time to create a internal think tank. And for me, the most important, I don't know, feeling is that I already, it happened a few times in my life that I met organizer that tried to think more than the next edition. Very few times in my life. I don't know, Tim, you speak with probably more people than me, but it's very difficult to find organizer that try to have a trajectory of the next 3 to 5 years. Now it's happening. Probably because the things are good, there is this need of understanding that there is a longer trajectory, that the next edition is tomorrow. So all of this make me also feeling very positive, because it's when you start to think and deep dive that the good things come out almost immediately.
Oh, sorry. One thing that we see with organizers, right, is like, oh, yeah, let's create these very high level campaigns, and then they think, oh, that's now our brand, and then they forget about maybe the practicality of making sure people do business. And then you see the opposite. Some events say we're just about doing business, and we forget about everything else. But the reality is that the best events are able to layer these different experiences all within one show, right? You don't have to be or that or that. You can be and. You can be both a show where business gets done and where great experiences are created and where people have a feeling of belonging and where there is authenticity. You have to kind of, as Enrico is saying, these different values that you have as an event can transcend these different elements of what the value proposition entails. And I think actually a really nice example of how like that has been very difficult for a whole category of shows is actually car shows, right? So, car shows have been, like we used to have them in every city, right? Like, the Amsterdam had a car show, Paris still has a car show, but every city had a car show. And now almost all of them have disappeared because I think they weren't able to capture those different layers. Some of them were very, experience focused, but there was no kind of business value. And they really struggled to find that right mix in that whole category. And I think some other more kind of commoditized industries have the risk of having the same, right? You might see it in like, technology manufacturing shows where sometimes it can become very dull because it's just technology parts. And so I went to IFA this year in Berlin in September, hundreds, like 100,000 people plus. And, it's one of those shows that like had the opportunity to be revitalized, and they did it. And they had an incredible event because there was also in the center of this trade show was a concert venue. And I saw Faithless there. And there were several other great performances, in the evening, and it attracted a completely new audience and a whole different energy. They had amazing merchandise, like better quality t-shirts than you could buy in stores. And so they created this whole brand around it that created so much more energy than you would expect within a typical technology trade show. And that created a new layer. And I thought that was really, really impressive how they've been able to do that.
Yeah, I think a key to everything that you're all saying is understanding the customer, because when you really know what they want and you get under their skin, you can deliver amazing experiences like that, Tim. What you're saying there, Tim, makes me think of this word that we talked about before, festivalization, and it's a big trend for next year. Devon, I see you nodding there. Tim saying having a B2B event with a concert happening in it and t-shirts. That sounds exciting. That sounds like a music festival, but for B2B geeks like myself. So what are you seeing with this festivalization trend? And do you think it's going to be big in 2025?
I think what you're seeing with festivalization is the people who are taking the time to think about their next customer base. Festivalization is a result of those who've thought through 3 to 5 years out. Because I think what we're also seeing is the next generation is probably one of the largest and fastest change generations from the change that we've seen through, like boomers to Gen X to millennials. The Gen Z is one of the biggest performance gaps. They have a completely different mindset. They're a different customer base. They have different values. And so the ones who are thinking through to festivalization, to different types of merchandise, to not your grandfather's trade show, are the ones who are taking the risks in order to attract that. And that's the ripple effect that you're seeing. It's like, wow, I saw this. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still talking about it because it spoke to me in a different way. And I saw that it attracted energy because what it's doing is breaking away from this is how we've always done it. And what I think the crux is the ones who are taking the time to think, who are taking time to see we need to attract this age group, the people who value a different experience, the people who feel belonging in being able to connect their personal and private lives together are the ones who are adding that festivalization as a word because it's attracting that different energy and that next generation to become consumers, followers, etc. Those who are too afraid to make any type of change don't see themselves in that next generation. And so don't want to think forward to how do I make change? I'm too afraid, so I won't do it. Those are the ones that are going to see the diminishing returns. Those are the ones that are going to fall fast and quiet. Those are the Blackberries and the Kodaks of the world that just like, we know that we're here and this is what we're good at, but we don't take the time to change because we didn't take a beat to say, let's pause that event for a year. Let's spend our time and money doing the research, taking the time, asking the questions to be even more relevant and to start that ripple effect of change to grow towards their KPIs instead of leaving it to chance. And I think that's what festivalization is the ones who've thought through that and are adding it to their events.
And I think this festivalization trend, sorry, I just have one point on this, is the city that you do the event in is going to be so important. So because some cities lend themselves so much better to this concept than others, right? So I know of a very big organizer that had a very successful event in Vegas, and they then brought that event to London, and it didn't work at all. And why is that? Because Vegas is an experience city. No one, very few people that attend an event live in Vegas. So everybody comes in for 3 days. They are 100% immersed from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, which is a very small window when you're in Vegas. And so when you're in London, people instead, have drop off their children at school in the morning. Then they go to the event and they're thinking about, having to do the laundry in the evening and cooking in the evening. So they leave early. So it's not an experience city. London is not an experience city. New York is not an experience city, not when it comes to B2B events. So this next year, the same organizer moved their event to Barcelona and they had an amazing event, way better. And therefore, I think that Dubai, for example, is going to be very successful. And I think that some of these cities that are real experience cities where a lot of people travel in and have incredible events are very, very good. Same with Singapore, not a very good city to do those type of events. Instead, you do them in Bangkok or maybe in Macau, right? Those are places where people travel in and you can have incredible experiences for multiple days.
Yeah, that's great, Tim, because it touches on one of the questions we've had. And Enrico, I'd like to put this to you. What role will destination play where a show takes place in the future? Is it all about the venue or is it about the destination? What's important with this trend?
It's a very complicated question, like all the other questions, because we cannot generalize. It's very difficult to generalize. This is one of the biggest problems of our industry, is that event serve other industry. It's a problem. And all these other industries have different needs that come also to the destination factor. Because obviously, I can give an example that for me is quite important. If you think about the wine industry, Bordeaux, it's probably the most important name that come to your mind. So it's red, Bordeaux, it's everything. But in that case, the destination somehow have all the chateaux of Bordeaux around the venue. What happened is that the venue just became empty because all the parties, all the place to be were outside of that place. So the venue, it's very important because in any case, we need a space where those magic moments happen. And it's fundamental. So this is an example about wine, but I can give you any other example. It's very important not to generalize. And it's fundamental, again, to understand the need of each single industry, where, for example, many people use this idea of consumer show, B2B show, government show. Fantastic, I love it. But I think doing studies and everything, that is much more important to understand the complexity of the products that are displayed inside of those shows. So finished good is completely different than industrial good, that is completely different than services. Going back to Tim, that is fundamental what he says. So the city can be fantastic if you're doing something that is finished good and everything. But if you have a very complicated product to sell and everything, you know, the city, yeah, it's important, but on the other way, it's much more important the critical mass that is creating in that specific place. That maybe, for example, going to do practical example, is Verona, related to the marble industry. Why? Because it's 2,000 years that the marble industry meet in Verona. You can decide to do something in Dubai, Hong Kong, Macau, but actually that's too much difficult to move. So I think, going back to your question, there's not a generalization. Destination are fundamental, but also, I would say, understanding that there is an industrial element and the complexity of the product that drive even more than the destination itself.
Thank you very much, Enrico. So that is the end of our webinar. Our next webinar is coming up on 23rd of Jan, all about revolutionizing event badges, what's next in 2025 and beyond. We're looking at smart badges, we're looking at sustainable badges, we're looking at all sorts of different types of badges, and Tim's going to be hosting that one. Right, so Devon, over to you. How can people get in touch with you after this webinar? What's a good way for them to contact you?
I would love for everyone to join me on my website, which is dmpcreative.llc, or email me at info@dmpcreative.llc. I'd love to connect, to talk about event strategy, to talk about how to utilize these empathy and value-based systems to add some structure and storytelling to your 2025. And I look forward to meeting all of you.
Great. Tim, how can people get in touch with you after the webinar?
On our website, grip.events, and by emailing me at tim@grip.events.
Lovely. Thank you for joining. And finally, Enrico, where can we buy your book?
That's easy. On Amazon, it's my name, Enrico and Gallorini, and the name of the book is In Person. But to connect with me, I would suggest probably LinkedIn, where I'm a little more in contact than a website or other thing for me. So LinkedIn, it's always the best place for me.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists. It's been lovely kind of insights coming out of your brains. I've enjoyed it immensely. There's loads of stuff we can go and do ready for 2025. I'm looking forward to festivalization and one-to-one meetings. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to our amazing panelists, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, everyone.